the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Irene Allen, the host of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And I've forgotten who I'm with today. No, I haven't. Yes, I have. Mark Johnson.
Yes. You know, one of these days I'm going to get you to write this down and have it on a Post-it note right there in your computer.
You know, I wouldn't see it. On a Post-it note, I wouldn't be able to see it, you know?
Oh. You need the big, thick reading glasses?
Yeah.
I think it would just be funny to leave it in there.
Yeah. He's often threatened to leave it in, I can tell you.
Oh, this part I'm already leaving in. We're into the show, so.
Yeah?
Yep, let's go.
All right, then.
All right.
Okay, so I fell over this week.
Oh, no. What happened?
Yes. I went... let me see. How can I say this? Not arse over tit. I went head over heels. I fell over on the drive and I've got gravel cuts all over my hands where I slid along the ground.
Why did you do that?
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Because I wanted to.
Oh, okay.
What do you think I did? I tripped over something out there. The wind was blowing. We've had 2 storms in one weekend. Did you know that?
No.
2 named storms, and I'm sorry for all the people out in Scotland and up the north that have got no electricity at the moment. I can only hope that they get it connected soon. Anyway, like I was saying, there's this storm out there, and I go out there, and I was literally blown off my feet.
Oh, boy.
So I was injured, and this was at 3 o'clock in the morning, about 3:30 in the morning. And it was outside on the drive of the front of the house. I was seeing Brian off to London as usual. And, just blood everywhere. Blood and gore, Mark. Blood and gore.
Sounds like a Hammer horror film.
Yes. Yes, it was. Very much like that.
Well, I hope you're healing up now.
No, the skin on my hands has gone all tight, and it hurts. You know, I think I've broken a few ribs, and I think I've done my knee in, and I think I've pulled a muscle in the top of my arm, and maybe I've done something to my hip. But the most painful bit are the cuts on my hands.
Oof.
You know?
Well, I've gotten road rash before, falling off my skateboard and when I was a kid and scraped the hell out of my knees and whatever. I remember how painful that was.
So what you call it, road rash?
Yeah. Yeah, they, like motorcyclists who aren't protected, aren't wearing jackets or anything, and they dump their bike and they skid along the ground and the asphalt just peels their skin right off.
Yeah, that's what it was like for me, I tell you. No, we call it gravel rash here. It's very painful, and I think I've got a few bits that I'm going to have to see to because they're going a funny colour. And never mind. What about you? So I've had an accident. Again, I've been knocked off my feet. What about you?
Not much. Celebrating a birthday this week.
Whose?
Mine.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I haven't missed it.
Not yet. Thursday.
Oh, is it? Oh.
Yeah. So when this gets posted, it'll be the next day. But I'll forget about it by then, Mark. Well, I'll be 48 years old, plus 10.
You little liar!
I said plus 10.
You little liar!
I don't feel 58. I swear to God.
58, another 2 years, 60. If you were living in this country, you'd be able to get a pensioner's bus pass.
Oh, good God. Yeah.
Oh, you're getting old.
Older. Well, physically, yes. Mentally, I'm still as immature as ever.
Yeah, I know that. Everybody knows that.
Well, the only bummer is I was supposed to go away this weekend to upstate New York, to Lake Placid of all places. It's ironic. The Olympics start Thursday on my birthday, but Friday we were going to go up to Lake Placid for the weekend for a ski vacation. And I've been watching the weather, and there's a huge snowstorm coming in that's going to dump 20 inches of snow on the day we're supposed to arrive. And I've been up there with those mountain passes. There's no way in hell I'm driving that. So I had to postpone to next month.
So what's that got to do with the Olympics?
Well, Lake Placid was the 1984, not 84. Was it 84? 82,
I
84?
thought you were talking about the Winter Olympics in China.
Well, it is. So the Winter Olympics are in China, but Lake Placid held the Winter Olympics back in, I think it was 1984. Back before I think they started splitting them up to every other year or every other 2 years. But yeah, they still have all the equipment up there from the big high jumps and everything, big museum.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was up there earlier this year. It's what made me want to go back up, back skiing again and go on a ski trip. But yep, we'll have to wait for another time when we're not going to get killed driving up there.
No. Maybe that's a good idea, actually.
Everybody's...
You're not taking me up there, are you?
No.
That's all over.
No. We've been getting clobbered with a lot of snow here lately and going up north. And I'm curious, when we talk to our guest tonight, who's way up north, I'm going to see how much snow they've been getting up there. So why don't we go ahead and get on with the show and introduce our northern neighbor, Mike Paterson. He is with Sasquatch, Ontario. And we had the pleasure of speaking with Mike way back in 2014 on our old show, Unknown Origins Radio. And we've decided to bring him back in because he's been doing a lot of things have happened since back then. And really fascinated to hear more about his research. So, Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Irene. Appreciate you having me on here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for coming on. So, we'll just do the...
Before he starts, wait.
Okay.
Before Mark starts, has it been snowing there, Mike?
Yeah, I live in a bit of a snow belt region, so yeah, there's lots of snow here.
And do you ski?
Maybe a couple. No, actually, I don't ski. Never really got into that. I'd probably end up breaking a leg or something. So.
Yeah.
No, I just.
Yeah.
At this point, I just trudge through the snow looking for Sasquatch footprints. So.
Oh, I see. All right, Mark, you haven't got no competition with him. He doesn't ski.
Well, I haven't skied for 20 years, so I got to get my ski legs back. Yeah. So anyway, so Mike, just for our listeners, so people who may not be familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get into investigating Bigfoot, Sasquatch?
Okay. I'm at this point. I'm in my 50s too. Lower half.
Rub it in. Rub it in.
He's young.
Young in my mind, but my body feels it. Yeah. At this point.
You're young, Mark. Not an old fart like hair. I mean, you're young, Mike. Not an old fart like hair, Mark.
Yeah, I do my best to stay physically active. So, I'm in my 14th year of doing this research, and it's something that kind of fell into my lap. I was spending a lot of time back in, I guess maybe around 2007. I'd go into the woods a lot I bought some good quality camera gear and taught myself photography, taught myself some good photography skills. So I was out in nature a lot, photographing wildlife and just scenic stuff like that. And then one day I just had this epiphany to start looking into this subject. And at this point, I really think they had something to do with that because of what I've learned along the way. But so I've been documenting a family of Sasquatch here in the Kawartha Lakes region in Ontario, Canada, and documenting a family activity with a property owner for the most part of the last decade or two.
Yeah, and I've been following your work for that decade, and I've been watching your videos that you've posted on YouTube and all the audio recordings, and everything that I've seen you post is fascinating. And the one thing we're gonna preface this right up front, so people who are listening to this will know where the direction of the show will go, is the fact that there are two camps on what Bigfoot is, for those who actually believe Bigfoot exists. Some researchers, like there's a friend of mine, Tim Stover, who runs Bigfoot Ohio, who believes it's a flesh and blood creature. He had a sighting 25 years ago, and he's been looking for it ever since. But they feel it's just an undiscovered hominid or great ape. But then there's the other camp where people have had such strange and paranormal type experiences with these creatures that we feel, and I'm in this camp, feel that it's something a lot different and something either interdimensional or something just that goes beyond our understanding of reality. And I think that's a lot of what you were experiencing during your research, correct?
Yeah, when it comes to the two camps, Mark, for me, I would describe it as belief and knowing. So I'm in the knowing side of things. At this point, I've had probably well over 1,000 encounter experiences, and things have developed quite significantly over the years. So at this point, I see Sasquatch as they're people. They're not an ape as an animal per se. They are a people, and they are basically masters of energy, of earth energies. They have this understanding of how to manipulate energies, and this is what's kept them hidden from us and basically allowed them to hold that mythical status all this time, to a lot of people who still disregard this or certain sanctions of science that dismiss it as folklore or hoax or whatever. It's these abilities they've had and their high intelligence that has allowed them to stay hidden from humans. And at this point, from my experience, they are basically in the midst of revealing their existence to the human race, but doing it as they choose. This is not a discovery by science, because science would have been all over this long ago. Although I have dealt with science, a couple of names involved that are both now sadly passed, but they were very supportive, and both were well aware that they not only exist, but they have these abilities. So it's just a matter of time. When you're in this long enough and you get close enough, sooner or later you're gonna experience something that basically changes your perception of reality.
Well, there have been a lot of counts of Bigfoot. I mean, Bigfoot is a term that the papers coined back in the 1950s out of California when Jerry Crew on that construction team. They found the footprints around their equipment. They took casts of it, got in the paper, and it was named Bigfoot, and it took off from there. And then, of course, the native, well, I call them Native Americans, but also First Nations people in the Pacific Northwest had the term Sasquatch, but he's also been known by a lot of different names in different cultures, not only in North America, but all around the world. I say he, but we know that they live in families, and there's a lot of evidence to show that they're highly intelligent. When I was a kid, I went up through Oregon, and I got a hold of a couple of books from the researcher John Green. I don't know if you're familiar with him and his early works. And I read those and ate them up and got hooked. And the one story that always really intrigued me was that of Albert Ostman from back in 1924. He was supposedly kidnapped by a Bigfoot and taken to a location and lived with a family of them for over a week before he was able to escape. Now, he wasn't hurt in any way. But, you know, the way he described the family and the dynamics and the fact that they seemed to have a language, seemed very curious by the things that he did and the interactions with him. You know, some people could say it's just a fanciful story, but it just struck a chord with me.
Yeah, I'm familiar with, both John Green and the Albert Ostman story. Understanding, don't quote me on this, but because I think I saw a blurb at one point where there was a mention from John Green about Sasquatch have these abilities. So, I think this was stated, long ago, before becoming so popular as it is these days. And as far as the Albert Ostman story, there's certain things that I struggle with, certain stories that I hear, because I've developed written communication with the one family, with Nefertia. That's the name of the younger male. I think he's 26 now, because I got his age from them. And, from what they've described and told me through written communication that's been developed over the years, language is no issue with them. They do have language, and apparently they understand all language. And apparently they all have these abilities. I don't know if they're all the same, to what extent, if some are developed more than others, but I do know that even the infants are able to basically disappear into thin air and materialize at will, which, from my understanding, is just it's an inherent ability they have. Just as we have intuition, that's an inherent ability, and some have developed more than others, right? So, yeah, when I hear the story with Albert Ostman, basically was carried off in his sleeping bag for hours on end, and then brought to where this family was, and then he ended up giving them some was chewing tobacco thing, and one of the males, I think he dumped it down his throat or something, and didn't taste too good, so he went running off, and that was his time to take off and get away, which he did. According to his story, but there's never any mention of the abilities. And if there was, abilities shown, perhaps he just kept it to himself, because, it's already enough of a story as it is, being out there, being kidnapped by a Sasquatch, basically, but to also come out and state that, you've witnessed some things that go against our reality. It's a bit much. And I've talked to a few people over the years that have spoken out about their experiences, and they've told me, I've had contact with some people, and they've told me that there was other things going on, but they just don't talk about them publicly.
Right. And a lot of experiences that some people have that I've read over the years, they'll be hiking and maybe they'll hear footsteps. They feel like they're being followed, but they can't see anything. And even they'll hear footsteps right behind them where they should be able to see something, and they don't see anything. I know there have been some researchers who've been out and they hear activity right near them. They're looking, but they'll use a FLIR thermal camera and nothing shows up on the cameras. And plus the ability, it seems like, I remember another story where someone was following footprints and then they just stopped right in the middle of the snow and like it vanished. So I've always felt like there wasn't, and I use the term interdimensional because I'm not sure what else to call it, a quality to these people, and I'll call them people, not animals, because I do believe that they are an intelligent being. We're not the only ones on the planet. We think we're the top of the food chain, but there are others that are just as smart and have abilities that we don't.
Yeah, they evolved down a different path than we have. We basically chose technology, and they stuck with Earth energies, the old school way, and they held on to these abilities that they have, and I guess they've always held those. As far as prints starting, with the property owner I've worked with, we've documented literally hundreds of footprints over the years in snow that are purposely left for us to show their presence. They do this to show their presence. They can leave a single footprint in snow without a trackway, or a trackway will just start and then it'll stop, however many prints later. They're usually not long trackways. And 100% of the prints that we documented in snow, they go nowhere. And also, there's been many incidents of physical contact. So I've had pats in the head and pokes, and I've even had, sitting in a chair, I've had I believe it was a hand. I don't know specifically, but sitting there and a hand or something, hairy, no smell, and it covered my nose and my mouth, basically covered my face. And I was cool with it at the time because, at that point I'd had a lot of experience with it and I was comfortable being around them. But just before that happened, inches from my eyes, like just right there in front of my eyes, there was a dark, wispy kind of smoke-like substance that appeared out of thin air, and then I felt this, firm touch over my face. And then I remember I described it to the property owner. I said it looked darker than dark, and he couldn't understand. We were in the dark, and I said it was darker than dark, and then it happened to him right after me, and he saw the same thing. And then he understood, because you could see it in the dark. It was this really dark black smoke-like substance. So there's been a lot of physical contact, as I've mentioned, but it's also happened both outdoors and indoors. And at this point, there's basically as much activity that's happened indoors as outside. So this is showing me their interdimensional quality as well as activity following me over the years. I've moved several times, and there's been a few things happen here over the place I'm living now. Is basically the second day I moved in. I was unpacking, and something happened right in front of my eyes. Basically, something appeared out of thin air, and so that, they have these abilities, and they do these things to basically show their presence, to say, "Hey, we're here."
Well, I'm going to ask you a strange question. The thing that appeared, or the things that started happening in this location you just moved to, do you feel that it was Bigfoot activity, like they're still following you, or could it be you were somewhere else that had something else there, whether it's ghostly, paranormal, or other types of elemental? Because I feel like, as I come from a paranormal research background, as does Irene, and we go to different places that have a lot of different activity, and it's not always ghosts. I've had some investigations here that I'm convinced whatever it was some kind of natural or elemental type of entity. I don't want to call it a spirit. I don't know what to call it, but was definitely affecting more than one house within a range in this town. And, I'm also fascinated with other types of entities that, there's legends all across Europe, and you have, the fairies in Celtic lore. In Iceland, you have the elves, Icelandic elves. There's Bigfoot seen all across the entire world. I think every country in the world has had Bigfoot activity. And other types of activity. Even down in the Carolinas, we interviewed a woman who talked about the Native Americans talk about the little people or the brown people, which are like smaller, like Bigfoot beings. So there seems to be a lot of things out there. So that's why, getting back to my original point, do you feel it was the same creatures that you were dealing with following you to the new house, or could it possibly just be something else that happened to be there?
The activity it's been identical, basically. So whether it's the same family, that I don't believe, because I've actually asked Neff's family if it's them here. And I've been doing some research right here at home in my backyard, because I live in the woods, back onto the woods. And I've gathered enough to show me that there's definitely activity going on here. They are showing their presence to me, and it's almost like I'm starting over again with the way things unfold. It's like a baby step process with how they work with revealing, their existence to those that they basically choose to make contact with. And what I'm seeing is very, very similar to what's gone on at the cottage property that I work at with that property owner up in the Kawartha Lakes. I also had a friend of mine that lived in this town called Brampton here in Ontario, and it's very congested place. And so he's basically in the middle of the city in a subdivision, and I told him, I said, I rented off him for a couple of years throughout this journey, and he's a good buddy of mine that I've known for, he's got to be close to 3 decades now. And I just, I told him, his name's Kyle. I said, hey, Kyle, some crazy stuff might start happening when I moved here. And he's pretty lighthearted, so he just laughed. And he was a skeptic, big time skeptic. He just, yeah, okay, whatever. And by the time I left, they'd given him footprints in the snow, shook in a tree right in front of him. They'd given him physical contact, telepathy. And then one night they even walked across the room in a transparent form downstairs in the house, through the wall, out through the door, through the closed door, across the room in front of him. I was upstairs when that happened. And so by the time I left there, he'd experienced more than enough to convince him. And I actually just talked to him not too long ago. He said stuff's still happening.
Wow.
There, which is, he's fine with it, right? Yeah.
Mike, do you think that, okay, so maybe this is a separate family, a different family from the first one, but do you think there is something in your energy that attracts them, or they read in your energy that it's okay to approach you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, they can read us, right? They can, they know our intention, and it seems that once you connect with their people, then you're good with all their people. It seems that way anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry?
You're accepted.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what I have going on here now, like the family that is here that I'm slowly building up or developing interactions with, that wouldn't have been the same family, or highly unlikely, that was at the last place I just mentioned. That might have been Neff's family, I believe. Actually, I'm quite sure it was, because I had some dreams while I was there. So, It doesn't matter. It seems where I go, the activity does follow me. Like I went down the road from here one night, and I took an audio recorder with me, and I found a patch of woods not too far from me. Just took a drive. I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. It was dark, and I walked in there. I was by myself, and there's an opening in the trees there, a big wide opening. So I went there and I sat down on the ground, so I could see the stars. And I put my audio recorder about arm's length away from me on the ground, and I let go. And it was just like, it was very quickly that I suddenly felt this energy. It was on half of my body, like it was almost like electrical energy, and it was on the same half of the side where I put the audio recorder, and I could feel that there was something there. And I said something. When I played the audio back, there was actually a physical contact, tapped the microphone, and then there was a whisper. I can't make the words out, but there's clearly a whisper or something speaking there. So it's pretty interesting to experience this stuff and just go anywhere basically and do this. And my audio has been my favorite tool to help me understand if there is a presence there or not, because they have tended to basically show their presence through my audio, which much of the time I learn after the fact if there was something there. Like there's been numerous times that I don't know if they're present, but when I get home, play the audio, it's like, okay, you guys were there. So a lot of it's very subtle.
Yeah. You sorry, Mark. You say that the ones that you've been dealing with that don't have a smell to them, and yet other people say that they do pong.
I'm sorry, they don't have a what?
A smell to them.
Oh, a smell. Okay.
When you say they put it, there's no smell with the ones that you've been dealing with, and yet other people have reported a very, very strong pong coming from them.
Well, actually, we had the property owner and myself. It was on a more recent visit that they gave us this experience of smells, and so they showed us that they can turn these smells off and on and direct it to the individual, because he was sitting this happened indoors, and we're both sitting at the kitchen table. So he's sitting on the end of the table. I'm at the side of the table. He's about arm's length away, 3-4 feet away from me. And suddenly I get these smells being pushed up my nose, basically. There was a streamlined wind that almost went up my nose, and they were very disgusting smells. And he couldn't smell it. Dwayne couldn't smell it, but I could. And then they reversed it, and they did it to him, and then I couldn't smell it, and he could smell it. So they basically were showing us that they can turn this smell thing on and off. Do you
think it might be like a skunk, a defensive thing? Like a skunk,
maybe.
When someone comes too close to a skunk, what does it do? It sticks its tail up and goes, a smelly smell. But do you think it could be a defensive thing with them, and they're just showing you that they're able to do it at will?
Yeah, they're definitely showing that they're able to do it at will, and it might be a mechanism that they use to make people leave an area. I don't know, but that situation that I was involved in there with that experience, it wasn't to make us leave. It was just another experience chalked up, with hundreds of others, right? Just something that they're showing us that they can do. But yes, they basically can turn them on and off at will.
Yeah. And the ones that you've experienced or you worked with have been more transparent than solid form, yes?
Yes, although both. I have
seen them in solid form.
Well, I have not had a close-up visual yet, although I've had partial visualizations. And then there's some other strange things that happen. There was one time the cottage owner and myself were sitting at the table. There's a window right there looking out into the woods, and he points up to basically a hairy tree and says something, and we're sitting there looking at it. And and I had my camera, binoculars, video camera. I used none of it. And next thing that happened was we both forgot about the incident as it was happening, and then it came flooding back to us both during the next visit. So there was some weird stuff going on there. And I've had another incident way back in the beginning of this where I'd had my initial close vocal encounter that put me on this path, and then very next week I went back to the same spot. The first one actually involved this sound like a chest thump beating, like a 3-time rapid chest thump tone, and that followed or preceded a vocalization that basically filled the forest. So when I went back the next week, I heard that exact same chest thump type sound. So I knew they were right there beside me. And again, I had, my intent back then was different. I was looking for the picture of the lifetime, right? That I don't care about anymore. But so they had actually, the next thing I knew, I was halfway home and didn't realize how I got there. So, some real strange stuff comes with this. But to get back to your question, so I have had partial visuals, not long ago during a more recent visit. I got poked in the shoulder and I swung my head around fast enough to see a dark, very dark shadow, and then it's gone, right? So I do know what Neff's face looks like clearly, but yeah, I haven't seen him up close at this point, and I hope to one of these years, but it's like a decade at this point, and still they've not given me a close full visual, so it's interesting in itself.
And also, you mentioned earlier on about this darkness, darker than the dark. When you were sitting in that room, that shape was darker than the dark. They say that about shadow people. This is this blackness that is actually blacker than the dark, and very, very much the same thing. These things couldn't be. Oh God, I had it just now. Do you know, Mark? When I get this stuff into my head, and I can't bloody get it out.
Yep.
They couldn't be shadow people, and what you're witnessing couldn't be one and the same, could they?
I don't know.
Because not all shadow people are in the shape of human beings.
Yeah, I really don't know. I know I've heard of the shadow people. There are other things out there besides Sasquatch that are interdimensional, that I'm learning. And, there's the whole Dogman lore as well that I've asked them about. So apparently those are very real, and they're not nice either from what they said. So there is definitely other things out there besides Sasquatch that are in that other realm, or, from my understanding, it's a shift in vibration that they can appear, disappear. So,
but that's
I don't know what the shadow people would be. I do have an idea what I'm dealing with because it's happened so much, like literally at this point. Mm. Yeah, well over 1,000 encounter experiences at this point. So I am very experienced with this type of research.
They all seem to me to be very, very much alike. Whether it's Dogman or whatever. I've RV Dogman, or what I thought to be Dogman, and I've seen it through RVs in a solid form and in a transparent form. I've investigated places, and I've even lived in this haunted house where you see things in transparently, like you can just about see them, and then other times you see them in pitch blackness, like you're talking, very, very dark form, and it goes from one to the other. I've actually watched something, or many times I've watched things go transparent, dark, as if, they got some sort of illumination light inside them. Do you understand what I mean? That they're able to switch, literally switch. And I think sometimes, you know, when I'm feeling them, it feels like, do you know, if somebody stood in front of you, they're in full view of you, they're as solid as can be, and then they step back into the darkness, they fade into nothing. It's like they're able to do that, you know, be a dark shape 1 minute and then just kind of step back into this being transparent, or vice versa. It's just, oh, I'm going to shut up now. I'm getting myself in a muddle. Carry on, Mark.
You know, it's all energy, right? Everything is energy.
Everything's energy, yeah.
And they have an understanding of how to shift that energy.
Yeah.
Well, and we do it too, right? We
do.
We shift our own energy. Yeah, we shift our own energy all the time.
Yeah.
Just
very much
they
so.
have more understanding of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of listening to both of you talk, and a lot of the things that you talked about that you encountered has me very intrigued, because there are some aspects to it that could be related, you know, not only to ghost phenomenon or spirits, or even, you know, UFO alien encounters too, having a period of missing time, basically, where 1 minute you're in the woods, next minute you're driving home, you don't know where that time went, what happened in between. People from all different types of experiences with different types of phenomenon, yet they're all reporting very similar types of activities. One thing that I'm really fascinated in, and I haven't personally witnessed it, but I've seen people who have filmed it, are when people see the lights in the woods, the glowing orbs. Have you had that experience?
Yes. I've witnessed it both indoors and out in real time. The most fascinating one was with Dwayne one night. We were sitting out front of the cottage. He's got a stone wall that there's basically a single on the back end of the cottage, there's the lake, and then on the other side, there's a single lane gravel road there. There's a stone wall that borders just at the side of the road. And then on the far side of the road is the woods, and it goes up a fairly steep incline. It might be about, 60, 70 degrees. It levels off maybe 150, couple hundred feet up, and then it, levels off it. So one night we're sitting there, and this was at a character for Dwayne, because this was way back in there, years back, and he had a lot of fear back then. That's gone now, but back then there was a lot of fear. So it was at a character for him to just suddenly get up without saying anything, run off into the woods and start climbing the hill on, in the forest on the other side of the road. And I sat there and I just watched him. I was like, where are you going? I see his flashlight making its way up, and then he stopped about halfway, and I waited a few minutes, and then I went up there after him, and I just said, what are you doing? And then I'm standing there, and I look back down towards the cottage, and suddenly this red plasma type orb appeared, and it looked to be, it had a very bright red nucleus, and then a more transparent, on the outside of it, almost like a cell with it was pulsating, basically. It looked to about maybe 4 feet in diameter. It would get big and it would pulsate and then get small again. It was pulsating slowly, and then it started dancing around. And I'm watching this, and I grabbed Dwayne by the shoulder, and I pulled him, because there's trees in the way and stuff, and I pulled him into view of it, and I said, "What the hell is that?" And he basically freaked out because he witnessed this before with his girlfriend up in the woods. Only what they saw was similar, the red orbs, but they saw a straight line of them that ended up turning into what looked like a translucent doorway in the woods. So this was basically the same type of plasma-looking orb. And at one point, I had taken one single footstep after watching this, what seemed like, few minutes. I can't remember how long it was. Like, I do have the audio recorded that would hear the incident, how long it lasted, because I run audio through my sunroof in my vehicle, and that was nearby. So I took one single footstep to try and get a better view, and that it just went poof, was gone, and that was it. Show over. So there's so I've witnessed that. That was the most really just incredible one I've seen out of just a few, but yeah, I have witnessed them, and they've been caught on camera too.
Back around the time we first interviewed, probably a little bit before that, when I used to talk to Tim Stover, and I haven't spoken with Tim in many years, but at the time, he's one of the types of researchers thinks he's looking for a flesh and blood animal. Yet he started, for a brief period of time, having some paranormal types of experiences that I always felt were related to a Bigfoot encounter, and he didn't realize it. There's a video he had, and he sent it to me. I enhanced it a bit. He and his girlfriend at the time were in the woods. Now, he always films himself, and then he films his explorations through the woods. And this one time, they're filming themselves with night vision, and behind them, there's this ball of light, this orb, and it was moving slowly behind them. And what fascinated me was it was moving in front of and behind trees, which right away tells me it wasn't dust or an insect. In fact, the trees and everything, they look like they're about 20, 30 yards away behind them. And it helped me gauge that this thing is maybe the size of a soccer ball and was weaving in and out of the trees behind them. Fascinating video. Now, he was unaware of it at the time. And then a few weeks later, he calls me up. I happen to be at the local Walmart with my wife shopping. It's about 7:00 at night. It's already dark. It was like late winter, maybe early spring. And he calls me from the woods. He's still in the middle of the woods. And he was totally flipping out. And so I was asking what happened. He goes, he was walking through the woods, and all of a sudden this ball of light, this big orb, giant orb, floated out of the woods, floated right up in front of his face and just hovered there. And he said it hovered there for about 30 seconds. And so my instinct was kicking in, and I said, "What did you feel during that time?" And he had to think about it, and he goes, "Well, you know what? I felt calm and peaceful. You know, he didn't feel threatened. He wasn't afraid. It was very calm." And then it wasn't until he suddenly got the idea to grab his cell phone to try to take a picture of it, it just vanished. And he said that's when he got scared. You know, when it vanished and went away, that's when he freaked out. And then he gives me a call to tell me about it. And I've always felt deep down that he had a Bigfoot encounter because he was seeing it in the energy form, and it was coming up to him, and it was a type of greeting. It was a type of communication, connection, but he never fully understood it.
They basically put it right in front of his face and still thinks they're blood, eh?
Well, he didn't know what it was, and he couldn't wrap his head around it. And, you know, and I understand that. You know, there are people, if they grow up and believing things a certain way and they're looking at everything from a physical standpoint, you know, they're not going to be able to see it any other way. And, you know, I don't fault him for that at all. But when I hear stories like that and I see stuff like that, you know, it makes me take a step back, think about it. And that was my gut instinct was, how do you feel? How did it make you feel? because I think that right there tells you so much about the energy form that you're feeling. Are you feeling something threatening, malevolent? Are you feeling something, you don't feel anything at all? You're just seeing a light. But the fact that he was calm and peaceful tells me that that was the energy it was imbuing and giving to him, and it was showing itself to him without actually showing him the big hairy ape that he wants to see. So very interesting. And plus I've seen other videos of other investigators being out in the woods in many different locations where lights are always seen in the woods. And it doesn't necessarily mean Bigfoot activity, but if the Bigfoot are like these types of interdimensional entities, which I feel that there are, like you said, there's more than just Bigfoot out there. There's a lot of other things, but they're more similar than what we are, and are able, they show off in these energy forms.
Like you said, the fact that he felt a calm sense when it was showing himself, they tend to show people in a way that is very, non-invasive, that, that doesn't frighten people. They, as I mentioned, they're masters of energy, so that they have this ability to show up in your dreams, and they're much more dreams. And when you experience it, you can understand, because there's a clarity that comes with that. And I think, like personally myself, I wake up immediately when they're over, and it's like, wow, they're wow dreams. And I've had Neff's family, several of them show up. The big guy that had brought one of their children to me, Neff showed up. So they have this just incredible understanding of energy, and they can show up in different forms. So orb activity is something that is definitely associated with Sasquatch presence.
There's some.
Sorry to interrupt, Mark.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask too? Like, has Tim changed his views somewhat at all since that experience, and being given some time to contemplate that?
I can't answer that because I have not spoken to him in several years, so I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
just curious.
I'm always curious to maybe reach out to him again and see how he's doing, because he's a really nice guy, and he's really, takes his research seriously. He's been going out ever since he had his encounter while in a tree stand hunting, and it was in the morning, and as it was getting light, he just happened to turn and look over, and there was one standing there 40 feet away from him. And because he was up in the tree, it didn't see him, or he thought it didn't see him, and he watched it for about 30, 40 seconds before it turned and walked off. And he could see the muscles moving under the hair and realizing this is not a guy in a suit. And so he's been a big researcher ever since. But yeah, I haven't spoken with him in a long time, so I really don't know what his thoughts are these days on what he has experienced.
The Bigfoot community in itself has come a long way since I've first started, my involvement. I've watched it gear more towards the truth and reality of what we're dealing with. There's still, a lot of people that hang on for dear life to that ape mentality. But people have come a long way. At this point, a lot more people are opening up about it. And I actually, on my own YouTube channel, I just recently started, I added a new layer to it. So I'm actually going to be sharing some experiences of others, and more geared towards the high strangeness that comes with that. So the first video that I put out is to do with a retired Oregon State Forest Park Ranger who had some pretty incredible experiences himself, and one of them was witnessing. He had a pastor with him at the time. They were hunting, and they had witnessed a Sasquatch, very large one. Basically, was standing under a tree, and then it walked off, and he said it disappeared into thin air just before it hit the tree line. So it didn't disappear into the trees. It disappeared just before it hit the trees. So a lot of people have seen this. They've witnessed them disappear into thin air.
There's a gentleman who lives not far from me. I met a few years ago. He was a former police officer. And it turns out he is very psychic, but it was something that he never really worked with or learned to develop until way later in life. But he wrote a book about his family's. They had a Bigfoot experience one summer where something kept coming around their house here in New Jersey. And now I haven't spoken to him in a little while, but he's moved up to a property north of me, and they've still had Bigfoot activity. They've seen something out in the fields. But sometimes I'm wondering if, and I don't know if you can speak for yourself or not, but it's just a theory I have, is that people who are more sensitive, I don't want to use the word psychic, but, more sensitive to different types of energies are more apt to have sightings or have experiences than other people because of their energy. It's like what Irene was saying earlier, that maybe that you have so many encounters even beyond the one family because of the energy that you're putting out, whether your aura or, they're able to sense that in you.
Yeah, and also just maybe being more open to it, and they know that they can present themselves and be more accepting. Or I have had. I remember a story from my folks way back, but they never would go into detail about it because they fear this stuff. So I was told I had things going on when I was in the crib. So this goes all the way back to infancy, and then there's been periodic incidents throughout my life where I've experienced things that step outside the realm of this paradigm, basically.
Well, see, my thoughts are that what we consider here in the West, Western society, what we consider reality is a total fiction. We've learned to suppress so much of our own natural abilities, and we, are brainwashed from a very early age that this is the way the world works. Listen to us. This is the science, and totally turn away from anything in terms of spiritual or even looking at the different types of high strangeness that's around us. Everybody has had experiences. Nobody can sit there and tell me that they've never had a paranormal experience. Yes, you have. Most times those people have blown it off or they've made excuses. I mean, I used to hear my name being called when I was growing up in my house, and it kind of sounded like my mom, and I'd go find her in the house. I go, "What do you want?" She goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, you're just calling me." She goes, "No, I wasn't." But somebody was clearly calling my name. And then I've had that follow me into adulthood. I haven't had it happen in about 20 years, but for a while there, it happened quite frequently. So it's our world that we live in is far more strange and wonderful than we want to give it credit for, because we only want to rely, or we're taught to only rely on our five senses. And ignoring the sixth and ignoring the energy and feeling. I mean, even when I've gone on investigations, not just ghosts, but other types of investigations, one of the things I do is I listen to what my body is telling me. I listen to how do I feel in a situation? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling calm or peaceful? And usually calm or peaceful. And I'll rely on that more than I do all the equipment that people seem to bring to investigations. Like you, I think the digital recorder is the most important piece of equipment we can ever use in any type of investigation, because it does pick up these sounds, and a lot of times you don't hear them at the time they're recorded. Now, I've heard disembodied voices, but I've also been in rooms that seem dead quiet, and then I play back my recorder and I catch loud voices. So that's the type of world we do live in, but yet most, I don't want to say most people, because you're right, things are changing. More people are becoming more open to things like this, but as a society in general, it's still not fully accepted.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, like my personal view on that is it's done on purpose to keep us from learning these truths, because once you start experiencing this stuff, it basically expands your horizons, expands your consciousness, and knowledge is empowering when you experience this stuff. And, people, if you look at the world right now, globally, we are being suppressed on a large scale. And this information, it changes that, and humans that they will not allow themselves to be manipulated by the powers that be, basically, what's going on right now. So I think it's done purposely and in all sanctions of our life, education, our food, everything's poisoned, fluoride put in the water and that sort of thing. It's a toxic byproduct of industrial waste, and they put this stuff in our water, right? So like you mentioned there, personally, I think it's done purposely to suppress our sensitivity to these energies.
Don't get me started. Irene will tell you I can rant on this for days, but yes,
yes, you can. You definitely can.
She's put in earplugs many times when I've gone on one of my tirades, but since we're talking about the high strangeness factor of this experience, I wanted to bring up, because I mentioned to you before that Irene had an experience that when she wrote about it in her autobiography book, Life Among the Spirits, and we talked about it in greater detail. And now we seem to think that she may have had a Bigfoot type experience. But do you want to tell that story, Irene? Do you want me to summarize it? How do you want to do it?
I got a mouthful of cherries at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'll summarize it.
Sorry, people.
There were two separate occasions when she went out to her backyard. Were you walking the dogs the first time?
Yeah, I let the dogs out.
Yeah, you let the dogs out, and she was in the backyard, and then she saw two what looked like two cloaked figures, and the best way to describe it is like the movie Predator, where you see like the shimmering outline of something that's invisible, but you can still see the shape. And she saw there was a big one and a little one, and the proportions and the way that the body types looked almost like a Bigfoot. Well, then the smaller one started to approach her, and it got within about, I guess, 40 feet or so.
40 feet? It got within, no, a lot closer than that.
Well,
it got within about 4 foot of me.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it got that close to you before you...
And the other one stood right in front of me on the second occasion.
Okay. See, that's why you need to chime in.
4 foot in front of me, yeah.
So it was 4 feet in front of you, and then at that point, she just threw up her hand in a stopping motion to say, like, that's far enough, mate. And it stopped in its tracks. And then it didn't turn around. It just like walked backwards back to where the other one was. And then they just vanished. Then it was about 5 years later.
No, about 3.
3 years later. She was walking the dogs again and was out in the garden and saw these two things again, but this time the smaller one was a lot larger, like it had grown. And this is the time where it walked right up and stood right in front of her face. And
I know it was the smaller one because I recognized the energy.
Mm-hmm. And you know how you were talking, Mike, about, the missing time where you were in the woods? Yeah. Well, while she was standing there, she felt like she received a download of information from whatever it was. And she doesn't remember what the information was, but there was a type of communication that happened. And then the next thing she knew, they were gone. But her dogs...
Yeah, the strange thing about that, though, Mark, when the dogs came running up the garden, and they stopped at the end of the patio on the far side of the house and wouldn't come to me. They wouldn't come any closer. They just... The hackles went up and they were growling. And it was only when these things went that they come running along and right straight in the door into the house.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it kind of goes along with, and again, we mentioned that there is the local Bigfoot they call in Welsh the Tremor. And in the fall, there are times when she's heard the howls coming from the hills nearby, coming through her valley. So you'll hear vocalizations. Of course, where she lives, she has all sorts of activity going on there. She lives in UFO Highway, and her house is haunted, and now she has Bigfoot in the surrounding hills. So,
well, it sounds, very plausible that that's what it could be, especially, showing growth like that too, right? I've actually documented growth with Nefertia, his foot. He's grown substantially over the years. His foot was 12 inches in length, within the human range when this first started. Wide foot, though, 5 inches on the width. And then I've documented it in 2018, 2 inches bigger. And then as of last winter, his foot's now at 16 inches. I didn't get a solid. Yeah, and he's still a young guy. He's only 26 years old. So he's got 16 inches.
What would a normal adult male be then?
Well, the big guy in the family, his foot's as of last year. I saw a print from him in 2015. And it was 20 inches, and as of last year, his foot is 21 inches, and he is minimum basically 12 feet tall because he was seen and he was photographed, and he was hunched, and I recreated the shot. And I went and stood in the same spot, and you can see that he's about 11 feet. But the witness who saw him was Dwayne's girlfriend at the time. Dwayne and I were on another part of the property when this happened. It was back in February 2013. So he was photographed from, through the window, and she said that he was hunched over. So at 11 feet, he'd probably be much closer to 12. And that was 2013, early 2013. So at this point, his foot's grown another inch. So he's a good solid 12 feet. Anyways, Nefertia is probably close to the 8-foot mark, somewhere around there. He did give us a drawing. I'd asked for a comparison drawing to myself and Dwayne and him, and he gave one, and he just towers over us. So I think he's probably in the 8-foot range, but I could be off a bit. But his foot's grown 4 inches as of last year since this started.
That's a big boy.
Yeah, thank God you don't have to buy
his voice has changed. Yeah, his voice has changed too in his recordings. It's gotten deeper.
Now, the property that you were on and investigating for so long with Dwayne was the owner?
Yeah, well, originally it was his father. It's a family cottage. His father is passed on a few years back. So Dwayne basically is the property owner, him and his mom. And but as far as visits go, it's just him throughout the winter, fall and winter months. That's when we like to do our research, because of the snow on the ground. That way we can keep an eye on any intruders coming in, because they can't hide their prints. And also Neff's family, they like to show us their prints purposely. So I never get tired of seeing their footprints. It's always fascinating, and also to see the growth too, right?
So you still have access to the property?
Yeah, I go when I'm invited.
Mm-hmm.
But
sorry, Mike. Sorry for
No, I'm just
speaking
saying
over you. I can't see you when you're talking. I was
It's
just going
okay.
to say, have you ever made a plaster cast of the footprints?
Yeah, I've made quite a few of them actually. One of my favorite ones way back in 2013. I didn't realize I could cast in snow, so I missed out on a few. And I have several. I have quite a few from Neff, and then a couple from other family members, both the children and older siblings.
I know this is a strange thing to ask, but when you look at human feet, they're all different. You've got some with stubby toes, some with long toes and everything. Is there any differences between these footprints of these creatures, people, whatever?
Yeah, they're the same as us.
Yeah?
They're people. They're all different, the same as we are. There's not like a, some breed of animal that's basically uniform throughout. No, they all have their different personalities and their different sizes and shapes, right from infant to adult and everything in between.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's great. I really do think it's great that you could see actually different types of footprints, and that way you'll be able to recognize which one is making it. Like, what's his name? Neffy? I can't pronounce it.
Nefertia?
Yeah. You would be able to tell his footprints even as he's growing older because of the shape of the toes and one thing or another. Yeah?
Yeah, I have a picture with 3 different casts, each one 12 inches, 14, and 16. And you can see that it's the same foot that's grown throughout the years. Yeah. You can tell.
Yeah.
Well,
that's amazing.
The one thing that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it at the end of the show tonight, is the audio recordings you have made of Nefertia and the others have always really intrigued me. The fact that how deep and powerful the voices are, the fact that half the time it seems to be talking or when he's inhaling rather than exhaling. I find that to be an interesting trait. But what killed me the most when I first started watching your videos was the fact that you interacted enough with them that you started learning English words and talking English.
Yeah, we taught him a few words. It started basically when he started calling out my name, because I knew he was there, or their family. We knew they were there from activity going on. So I would just stand there and I'd pat my chest, and that's my thing that I do. I'll pat my chest and I just say, Mike, 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 or sometimes I'll pat my head. I'll say, can you touch me? But and then there was tree and flower and brother and marble. And so, yeah, there was a few words that he learned throughout the years. And also he's tried to do the same, teach some of his language. I remember one time I was trying to pronounce something. I thought I was getting it pretty good, and then he yelled at me, and you could tell he's giving me proper shite, So.
What, do you think he's gotten irritated with you at times?
Well, I definitely know of one incident, yeah, where he yells at me because I'm not getting it proper.
Okay. That's funny.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I just laughed at him. What can you do, right? He could snap me in two if he wanted. I just laughed, and we just carried on. So.
Oh, good. Well, so what's next in your research? What else are you looking to do from here with everything that you've learned?
Well, as I mentioned, I do have activity that I'm working at developing here at home. There's a family that have shown their presence here. I know they've allowed their children near me because I footsteps and running up to my tent while I'm snoring away, and it sounds like rubbing rocks together and running away, and just cute little footsteps running around. And I got on audio one night where one of the adults walked in. I had my audio recorder strapped to a small sapling tree there, and it walked right up and give it a tap, a couple taps, I think, and then some animalistic type sniffing. And then, comes in with heavy footsteps. So that was an adult. So there's been an adult and a young one show their presence. There's been other things that have happened here too. Like I have a granite coffee table in my living room. I remember one morning, it was about 5:30 in the morning. I just gotten up. I went and used the bathroom, and I came back and got into bed, and I was laying in bed, and suddenly I hear, I don't know if you can hear this, but I hear, a stone coffee tabletop. I hear two loud knocks like that, very, very firm. I knew right away. My eyes just bugged out of my head, and then I went to sleep. They were showing their presence, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. There's been other things that have happened here too. My landlord has witnessed vocalizations, very loud vocals right in the backyard, and myself and my girlfriend had an experience out back too with some footsteps and some leaves kicking up, and a shimmering form witnessed. And so I'm working at basically developing that here, as well as I think this year I'm going to also added a new layer to my YouTube channel. So I'm going to continue with that, sharing the encounters of others. And also I think this year too, especially now too, with all this COVID crap going on, I'm not working. So I'm going to start taking small groups, probably up to 4 plus myself, and charge a nominal fee, start taking groups out camping for a couple nights, and just give my time and experience, and for anybody interested in doing outings. But I won't be taking them into Neff's area. I protect that. I've spent far too much time and effort in that, and have gone through far too much trouble over the years. But it doesn't matter really where I go. I think just being in the woods, I got to scout out some locations still. So, I'll do my best to pick some good spots. And so I plan on doing that sort of thing.
What advice would you give anybody who wants to get into, Bigfoot research or looking to make contact or communicate with these beings?
Be completely honest. Don't try to trick them. Forget the cameras. Leave the trail cams out of it. Until you got some. You can do that if you want, but tell them what you're doing. Tell them what it is. Just talk to the woods. Say, hey, this is a camera. If you want to show yourself, thanks, or whatever, that sort of thing. Like I said, I use audio recorders. I do a lot of playback listening. It's just countless hours of a lot of white noise playback, and it's taught me so much though about their activity and their behavior, how they interact with the device. Now they understand what all the electronics do. So be honest, maybe bring them some gifts, reach out to them, just put your intention out. Just, like I said, just be straight up with them. Do your best not to fear, and stay tuned into your feelings. If it's just your own fear, if they want you to leave, they'll make you leave, and they can do it without you even knowing. So if it's just your own fear, maybe you'll hear a vocalization and it might scare the hell out of you, and that's just your own fear. It's understanding their behavior too. They can be very boisterous in their antics, and it has nothing to do with aggression or them trying to they like to mess with us. They have a lot of humor. Just the humor is consistent with their activity. So just if you want to get an audio recorder, like I said, that's my favorite way of checking, because you might not even know they're around, and then you play back your audio. Maybe you'll get a stick snap or a rock clack right at your microphones, and that's a very good sign of their presence. I get a lot of that, a lot of stick breaking and rock clacking, that sort of thing. So,
Mike, you talk about gifts. What do you mean by that? Nuts and fruit and things like that, or what sort of gifts?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, you can do that. Just or something from the heart, or maybe even some tobacco, or maybe a bag of marbles for the kids, or just use your imagination. Sometimes you could even like out back here. At one point, I was using some marbles and some sticks and stones on this log, and I was arranging them in a certain way that if anything came up and made an adjustment, say it was an animal, it would get all messed up. But if it was them, they and I did have this moment where I had put some sticks like in a tic-tac-toe kind of formation with the stones inside and that, and then you take a picture, right? And you go back and you look for any changes. So I'd gone back, and one of the sticks had been tucked under one of the other sticks. And that was it, just to show that, or there was another time there were two rocks in the center. They had a gap between them. They were pushed together. So they were now touching, just little subtle differences, right? And if it was an animal, like say a raccoon or something, that's not going to happen. It's going to be a mess. It's not going to be such a delicate feature. So you can arrange things. It's sort of like playing games with them, arrange things, with some of the, the foliage or whatever in the forest, and then take a photograph of what you do. And then when you go back, you can look at the photo and see if there's any differences. Maybe there's a stone you put there. Maybe it's just turned a little bit, or turned upside down, or flipped over, or, just little things like that. Give you a sign of, they're very, like I said, they're very subtle a lot of the time in how they present themselves. So you really got to pay attention to detail.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Mike, thank you so much for talking with us tonight. This has been very incredible and enlightening, and definitely would want to keep track of your future investigations. Now, where can people find you, or your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I have my YouTube channel, Sasquatch Ontario. There is an organization called Ontario Sasquatch. I have nothing to do with them. They're actually complete opposite. These guys don't have any idea what they're doing. They're the ape mentality, flesh and blood only. So it's Sasquatch Ontario. That's myself. And I have, dozens of videos out there. I do have a paid subscription thing too, because I was asked by the owner at one point to not post anything publicly anymore of the cottage. So I started putting that content behind a wall, although other stuff, new stuff, like say from home or other stuff I'm doing, I'll put that out publicly, right? So there's my YouTube channel, and then I do have a web page that, I don't keep it as updated as often as I should, but I have a website, sasquatchontario.com. And people can also reach me through email at sasquatchontario@yahoo.ca. Not .com, .ca. A lot of people get
CA for Canada, folks. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, great. Fantastic. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. And what we're going to do now is we're not going to play our normal lead out music tonight. I'm going to be attaching at the end of this a compilation of a lot of the vocals and sounds that Mike has captured in his investigations. So listen to those and make up your minds and see what you think about all this. Again, Mike, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Mark and Irene. I appreciate it. And I hope you played that whole medley piece. Play the whole thing for them. I'm sure they'd enjoy that.
Yes, I will definitely do that.
Even that tree going over at the beginning.
Okay. Yes, I'll put.
Is that what it was? A tree going over?
Oh yeah, that was a big tree, but 10:30 at night, probably a couple 100 feet from my tent, and that hit the ground hard.
I've heard that they do push trees over, damaged trees, and one thing or another.
Yeah, I've heard a few of them go over throughout the years doing this nearby. Recorded a few too. So
okay. Yeah, I'll definitely put the whole thing on here. So, people, you'll hear that next. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another edition of the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK radio network. I also want to mention that we are also now, you can catch us on SoundCloud, as well as Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. Hey, if there's a podcast station, you can find us. Plus our streaming station at the Paranormal Radio app, iTunes, and also on our website at paukradio.com. So everyone, you have a great week. Irene, you have a good one.
Yeah, Andrew, and thank you, Mike.
Thank you for having me on.
I'm going to your YouTube channel now to have a look at that.
All right.
Okay,
cool.
folks. Awesome. All right, and here's the audio, so enjoy.
I think my friends just pushed a tree over. Wow. That was... wow. That might be a Sasquatch. Go! No. What the fuck? Oh, hey, he's right there. What? Ooh. No! 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 No!